Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching 7th and final part of What If Naruto Became Power Hungry. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
When they stood across from each other, the tension was palpable, and Naruto warily observed the legendary Uchiha, his mind racing to devise a strategy to deal with him. "So you're the brat getting in the way of my plans," Madara said, his voice cold and a small frown on his face. "What can I say?" said Naruto. "Our endgame isn't the same, but the steps to get there are." Naruto decided to break the standoff after Madara just stared at him silently, his frown never leaving his face. "Take the targets back to base, Sasuke and Orochimaru. We can't afford to let him get them," he said, his gaze never leaving Madara. "Oh?" Madara raised an eyebrow at that. "Do you think I'm going to let you go?" "I'm going to tear this jerk apart," Kurama growled from inside the seal. "Get your head in the game," hissed Naruto. "We can't afford to be careless with him." "I see you have the Kyuubi," Madara pointed out. "Their name is Kurama," Naruto scowled. "It doesn't matter. I'll take the beast as well." "I'll be damned if you ever turn my friend into a puppet again," Naruto snarled. "Yes," Madara said, chuckling darkly. "You will suffer the consequences." Madara dashed towards him. Naruto saw it coming but only had time to make himself intangible before Madara was upon him. The blows passed through him, but just as he prepared to counterattack, Madara suddenly moved much faster. The Uchiha used the fact that Naruto had to be present to attack to land 2 punches on him and kick him away. "Those were my pawn's eyes," Madara remarked. "I understand their every flaw." Sasuke suddenly appeared from behind, his M spinning and his blade covered in lightning. Madara, on the other hand, was much faster and easily dodged the younger Uchiha's blade, landing several blows on Sasuke in rapid succession before Sasuke managed to land an Amaterasu and jump back. "Sage Art. Fire Style. Great Fire Destruction," Orochimaru yelled, launching a torrent of flames at Madara. Sasuke added his own Amaterasu flames, even using Kagetsuchi to transform them into spears in an attempt to pierce Madara. "What the hell are you doing?" yelled Naruto. "I told you to take the targets and run." "No way are we leaving you behind to fight Madara," Sasuke replied. Naruto said with a shake of his head. "I need to go all out." Naruto burst into a golden aura, his Kurama chakra mode combining with Sage mode, and yelled at Sasuke. "Use the curse mark, Sasuke." The Uchiha nodded and his skin darkened until it was dark gray, 2 webbed wing-like hands burst from his back, and a cross-like mark appeared on the bridge of his nose. His chakra quickly rose, and he looked at Naruto, who nodded. The duo's hands burst into lightning, Naruto's purple and Sasuke's black, and Orochimaru saw this and cancelled his jutsu. Madara reappeared, unharmed and using the Rinnegan to block all attacks. A moment later, the 2 friends were upon him, Sasuke coming low and Naruto coming high, and Madara jumped and twisted his body vertically to dodge. That proved to be a mistake when a golden hand appeared from Naruto's chest and burst into purple lightning, which Madara saw and smiled at before his Susanoo ribcage appeared and pushed the 2 away. "That was pretty good," Madara said cockily. "However, it's not good enough." He sped through his own set of hand seals and yelled. "Majestic Destroyer Flame Fire Style." While Sasuke and Orochimaru came at Madara from the sides, the 2 swung their blades at the Uchiha, but just as they were about to hit, 2 wood clones appeared from Madara's back and blocked the blades. While Madara dropped the jutsu, the wood clones appeared completely and kicked the 2 away. "Let me ask you a question," Madara said, smirking. "Would you rather have the clones with or without Susanoo?" The 2 clones and the original were engulfed by the massive form of the perfect Susanoo, towering above the group, as Madara explained. Are you ready to give up now? Naruto growled and summoned 2 shadow clones, and the golden aura that surrounded them grew until all 3 stood in a massive golden chakra avatar of Kurama. You son of a bitch, 2 can play this game. Naruto exclaimed as the 3 avatars' upper bodies were covered in Susanoo armor and the blue chakra katana appeared in their hands. Are you copying my technique? Madara asked, chuckling. Naruto growled and all 3 avatars raised their empty hands and tails towards Madara. The jutsu formed, and Naruto fired. Tailed Beast Bomb by Sage Art. Each of the senjutsu-enhanced bombs flew at Madara and his clones, and the explosion was devastating. The entire area was reduced to a crater, and Naruto saw Madara and his clones through the smoke. The elder Uchiha was still smirking, and his Susanoo was unharmed. Let's dance, Madara said with a grin as he rushed towards Naruto in his Susanoo. The colossal chakra avatars clashed their blades, the shockwaves shaking what was left of the area. They clashed again and again until Madara gained the upper hand and one of his strikes cleaved through the armor and severed one of the Kurama avatar's arms. Naruto took advantage of the brief distraction by hurling his katana at Madara, but the Uchiha deflected it and a few of the shuriken until one of them struck him in the arm. The affected appendage of the Susanoo was then teleported instantly to the Kamui dimension, leaving Madara's Susanoo armless. Meanwhile, one of the clones had cornered Madara's wood clone with the help of Sasuke, who was using his own Susanoo and Mangekyo abilities to distract and hinder his opponent's much larger Susanoo. Sasuke used Kagatsuchi to create Amaterasu chains that bound the wood clone's avatar's legs, allowing the shadow clone to land a clean hit and bisect his opponent with the katana covered in both his own wind chakra and Sasuke's black flames. On the other side of the battlefield, Orochimaru had transformed into a hydra and was casting senjutsu after senjutsu to assist the shadow clone. After Orochimaru managed to make the wood clone lose his balance, the shadow clone attacked with a Chidori. The Kurama avatar's Chidori pierced through the Susanoo but missed the wood clone. Madara's clone landed on the ground and dashed towards the avatar, using his smaller size and superior speed to reach his target, and using the Rinnegan to absorb the chakra in his path, he burst through the armor and the avatar towards the shadow clone. The clone noticed this and used both Kamui at the same time to become intangible and teleport away the wood clone's head. He succeeded, but not before the wood clone managed to get past his barriers and hit Kurama with a powerful genjutsu. Kurama howled in pain and passed out, cutting Naruto's connection with them and causing him to lose both the avatars and the chakra cloak. Fuck! He exclaimed as he fell to the ground. I can't keep up with him without Kurama. This isn't looking good, Naruto-kun, Orochimaru said, appearing next to him, holding the targets. I know! Exclaimed Naruto. We need to get out of here. You think I'll let you? Madara yelled as he spit a massive stream of fire from his Susanoo at the group. Sage Art. Inferno style, majestic destroyer flame. Yelled Naruto. Sage Art. Fire style, great fire destruction. Exclaimed Orochimaru. Sage Art. Amaterasu, Sasuke exclaimed, drawing on the curse mark's power to boost his Ms even more. Even with all 3, they couldn't keep up with Madara, so Naruto summoned his Susanoo and focused all of his chakra into its defense. Madara's flames began to crack it, but the few seconds he had were enough. He quickly swallowed both targets and his team. His Susanoo broke and Madara cancelled his jutsu. The Uchiha saw what Naruto was doing and dropped the Susanoo and dashed at Naruto with a shout, his face filled with rage. No! Naruto said, his voice strained, as he looked at him. Goodbye, asshole. He vanished into Kamui in an instant before it was too late. After a week, Naruto collapsed as soon as they returned. The blonde had never faced an opponent so formidable, and the strain of the battle, combined with what was done to Kurama, rendered him unconscious for a week. Even though all of his physical injuries had healed, he was still weak from his connection with Kurama, and the tailed beast had only recently awoken. After much worry on Karen's and even Sasuke's part, though the latter was much quieter about it, they gathered once more to discuss their plans. "I told you I'm fine, Karen," Naruto assured her 1,000 times. "You fought Madara. You were unconscious for a week. Not even my power could wake you up." She yelled at him. "It wasn't planned, but sometimes you just have to roll with the punches." "I'm curious how that happened," Orochimaru said. "Madara? Even if I had to guess Zetsu did it, I knew that bastard would be trouble," Naruto said. "That is a problem we must address," Sasuke stated. "If he can just bring legendary shinobi back to life, we need to take action. It's worrying, but all we can do is keep moving forward. They'll need the Gedo Mazo, so they'll come for us eventually, though it'd be better if we didn't have to deal with a siege." They all nodded as Kabuto entered the room. They turned to face him, and Orochimaru spoke. "What is it, Kabuto?" "We're in the midst of something significant. Our spies got some information that I thought you all should know," Orochimaru-sama, the spy with glasses, explained. "What is it?" Karen inquired. "A 5-cage summit has been convened." "By whom?" inquired Orochimaru. "Apparently, Onoki wants to track you down and reclaim his tailed beasts." "This could be a good chance," Sasuke said. "If we can get the 5 great nations worried about Madara and Zetsu, we might be able to distract them long enough for us to get the final 2. Would they listen to us? We're not exactly well liked," Karen wondered. "They will if we can prove Madara resurrected, or they will split their forces and give us some breathing room." "How are the other tailed beasts doing?" Orochimaru inquired. "They're in Kumo. Both Matabi and Gyuki are well liked there, so there's no reason for them to wander. In fact, Naruto-kun, I heard that Kumo had already hidden their tailed beasts when they heard about the attack on Iwa and the kidnapping of their Biju," Kabuto corrected. Contrary to what they expected, Naruto grinned as Orochimaru chuckled and inquired. "Do you know where they hid?" "The Turtle Island in Lightning Land," Orochimaru said, his eyes widening. "I've heard of it. Do you know where I can find it?" Naruto said with a shake of his head. "Unfortunately, because it is constantly moving, the only way to find it is to go looking." "What are we going to do?" Sasuke inquired. "Orochimaru and Karen will find the island," Naruto said, turning to Karen and continuing. "With your sensory ability, you will be able to find the island. Once you find it, send me a message and I will come. Do not engage the Jinchuriki under any circumstances. Killer Bee and Yugito are both perfect Jinchuriki, and while I have no doubt you two can defeat them, we can't risk either of you getting away." Orochimaru and Karen nodded, realizing how important this was and how close they were to the end, and that failure was not an option. Naruto then addressed Sasuke, saying, "You agree with me, Zetsu will most likely try to use the summit to manipulate the nations, and with the threat he poses, we can't afford to waste this opportunity to get rid of him." Sasuke nodded, his determination in his eyes, and said, "I'm not going to let him get away." "Good," Naruto said, smiling. After 5 days, the cages of the 5 great villages had gathered, and they had all agreed that the summit would take place in the neutral territory of the Land of Iron, the land of the samurai. The cages and their bodyguards had arrived, and the summit was about to begin. "Greetings to all of you, my name is Mifune, and I'll be the mediator of this summit," said an elderly samurai. "What the hell is he doing here?" growled Onoki, glaring at Minato, who had arrived as one of Tsunade's bodyguards. "I'm with the Hokage, and I have every right to be here," Minato replied. "Everything all right?" "It's because of your bastard of a son that we're here in the first place." exclaimed Onoki. Mifune slammed his katana on the floor and said before the yelling could continue. Enough. We've come here on good terms, not to fight amongst ourselves. Seeing what Mei said, Onoki kept staring at Minato but didn't continue the argument. Do I have it right that we're here because of Naruto Uzumaki? Indeed, Baki, the new Kazekage named after Konoha's failed invasion, said. That brat teleported into my office, attacked my village, stole both of my Jinchuriki, and erased an entire damned mountain for some reason. I demand that he be apprehended and brought to me immediately to be punished. Naruto is from Konoha, Tsunade explained. Hand him over to us. We'll handle him. Please, A said, scoffing. He has attacked your village twice. You are powerless to stop him. And you expect us to put our trust in you? Onoki asked. I still have both of my Jinchuriki, and if my spy network is correct, I'm the only one left, A countered. I assumed that brat, along with his siblings, killed our Jinchuriki, but given that the Ichibi has yet to reform, I have to assume that he took it, Baki explained. Both the Sanbi and the Rokubi vanished, Mei explained. I assumed it was him because he was the last to see Yagura, but I wasn't sure until I heard about him capturing the Nanabi. We have to deal with him and get back the Biju, Onoki said. You're going to find that difficult, a voice from above said. They all looked up to see Naruto standing upside down on the ceiling, smirking at them. You, Onoki yelled. Nice to see you again, old man. I'm glad you recovered from the beating I gave you, Naruto said sarcastically before turning to the Mizukage and saying. Long time no see, Mei. Yes, ever since you took Yagura, Mei stated flatly. I told you my help wouldn't be free. I just didn't tell you how much it would cost, he shrugged. And what if I said no? I would have taken Yagura regardless, and most of your troops near the village would have died in the crossfire. Naruto's gaze was drawn to Baki, and he said. I knew Suna was the weakest link, but I had to make you Kage. So you're the brat who murdered my students, Baki explained. If it's any consolation, they're among the few people I regret having to kill. It does not. Naruto shook his head and moved to A, completely ignoring Tsunade and her group. Want to know something funny? If I hadn't been so determined to achieve my goal, I would have joined Kumo. When Naruto explained this, A raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. Don't get me wrong, I know you have your dark secrets. Hell, I heard your predecessor tried to kidnap her and breed your own Uzumaki clan, Naruto said, motioning to Kushina, the other bodyguard. The Uzumaki woman glared at her but took a step back, both at the painful reminder of what could have been and her son's casualness when discussing it. Naruto noticed this and shook his head. I do not condone any sexual crimes, it disgusts me that he was willing to do that, he even tried again with the Hyuga heiress. My point is that you at least appear to be trying to improve, and that among hellholes Kumo appears to be the best, or at least the least awful, at least you treat your Jinchuriki well. You claim to care about the Jinchuriki but are capturing them. Do you intend to unite them under your banner? Mei inquired. No, every Jinchuriki I've caught is dead. The tailed beasts within them have been extracted and sealed away in their original container. Can you explain what you mean by original container? Unfortunately, I didn't come here to explain my plans or to lecture you on history. I came to warn you. If you expect us to be threatened into handing over the remaining Biju, then, A started, but Naruto cut him off. I don't need to threaten you. My warning is about Madara Uchiha, who has returned to the living world and is also after Biju. How do you know it's the authentic Madara? Minato inquired, recalling Obito. Because, unlike you, I'm not a moron, we fought, and that mountain that went missing near Iwa was the result of our battle. He wasn't wearing any masks and made no attempt to conceal his identity. Do you think we'll believe you? Onoki yelled. No, Naruto said, smiling. I plan to use you as bait. A body fell from the roof, covered in black flames, and Naruto smirked as he drew it to him with his Rinnegan. I told you you'd lost Zetsu. Mother's resurrection will still occur. I ran into Madara. He may be strong, but it makes no difference. I will still achieve my goal. You fool, he'll kill you and bring your mother back. Naruto hissed and scowled. No, he won't, and even if he does, you won't be around to witness it. We'll see, Zetsu smiled as the flames consumed him. Naruto turned to Sasuke, who had fallen next to him, and said, we must put an end to this before Madara can intervene again. We won't fail, Sasuke said, nodding. I have no idea what you're planning, or even if what you said is true, scowled. But you'll never get your hands on my brother or Yugito, and I'm not going to let you go free. Naruto said with a smirk. Oh, you're serious? And how do you intend to stop me? A growled and jumped towards Naruto, but it was Sasuke who retaliated, using a super strengthened quick to send him flying. Minato sent a Hiraishin Kunai flying towards the duo. Naruto let the first blow pass through him, but as he moved to counterattack, Minato managed to place one of his Hiraishin seals on his forearm. Naruto scowled and punched Minato in the face, sending him flying away. The others moved to attack, but Naruto and Sasuke vanished. After 2 days. It took 2 more days for Karen and Orochimaru to find the location of Turtle Island. In the meantime, Naruto had managed to modify Minato's seal with a space-time lock so Minato couldn't just teleport to him. However, this meant that he had to deactivate the lock and leave himself vulnerable to using Kamui. It also meant that Minato could now track him, which infuriated Naruto because the only reason he. When they found it, they gave Naruto the signal, and both he and Sasuke appeared shortly after. This is Turtle Island, Sasuke explained. Yeah, it was difficult to find, but here we are, Karen admitted. I sense another Jinchuriki here, Naruto said. Should we surprise them? Karen inquired. No, Naruto said, shaking his head. They can sense me as well. The previous ones couldn't because they weren't perfect Jinchuriki and didn't expect to be attacked. These two know we're coming. Do you think we'll split up? Orochimaru inquired. Naruto said with a shake of his head. There's no point, they're all together. I'm going to confront them, and I want you to surround us and concentrate on subduing the targets as quickly as possible. While the others formed threes, Naruto walked towards the clearing in front of the Waterfall of Truth, where B and Yugito stood. So you're the one going after the Jinchuriki, Yugito scowled. Do you see any other people? Yugito scowled even more as Naruto questioned with a raised eyebrow. I know you two are on the same wavelength. Let me speak with Kurama. The voice came from B, but it was unmistakably Gyuki's. Naruto was approached by a clone who said, Gyuki. What on earth are you doing, Kurama? What would the old man think? I'm putting my trust in my container. The old man's hopes for peace are naive. You know humanity will never change. So you'd rather spit on his coffin. Find your own siblings. Gyuki yelled. I'd rather ensure my safety and happiness than continue to be enslaved and used by humans in the hope that things will improve one day, Kurama scowled. Gyuki shook his head, and they turned to Yugito, saying, If Matabi doesn't listen, we'll have to beat him into submission. Matabi, now in command of Yugito, nodded and began to transform. 2 things happened at that moment. Chakra chains arose from the ground and ensnared Matabi before they could fully transform. The chains caused the chakra cloak to dissipate, and Orochimaru jumped out of the trees before they could react and slammed his hand into Yugito's stomach. The 5 elements seal cutting the connection between Biju and Jinchuriki and causing Yugito to become dazed. Karen quickly took advantage of this and the chains grabbed. Meanwhile, Amaterasu's black flames appeared around B, transforming into spears and stabbed him through all of his limbs. Sasuke jumped next to him, and a pair of Susanoo hands grabbed and held B tightly. B burst into his tailed beast mode, breaking free from Susanoo's grip before quickly transforming into his full-tailed beast form. Karen and Sasuke, get the target out of here, Orochimaru, you're on my side, Naruto yelled. Gyuki began charging a tailed beast bomb, but Naruto used the outer path's chains to restrain him while Orochimaru speed through hand seals. Several tree roots burst from the ground, and also restrained the Biju. Gyuki finished charging his attack and fired immediately, but Naruto countered with a few hand seals. Inferno Style. Hellfire Ball, by Sage Art. The white-hot fireball collided with the tailed beast bomb, and because Gyuki was weakened by the chains and wood-style roots, the attacks were equal in power until another root appeared from the ground and tightly shut Gyuki's mouth. The jutsu crash caused an explosion that covered the area in smoke. When the smoke cleared, there was a large area that had been completely vaporized, and Gyuki was forced to the ground. Unable to move, Naruto transformed into his Kurama avatar and charged his own tailed beast bomb. Gyuki managed to open his mouth and yell, "Do not do this, Kurama. It is not what our father desired." Neither Naruto nor Kurama responded as the bomb was detonated, and the subsequent explosion engulfed Gyuki, leaving B unconscious in a crater. Sasuke and Karen jumped alongside them, Yugito in hand, and Karen said, "We should go because a few signatures are approaching the island." "I figured they'd have someone keeping an eye on the two," Naruto speculated. They were long gone by the time the Raikage and Minato arrived on the island. Office of Raikage. In rage, he shattered his desk and paced across the room, shouting, "That jerk kidnapped my brother. I'm going to kill him." "Naruto must be stopped," Minato said, regretting the situation but bracing himself for what had to be done. "He's a treat for all of us," Mei agreed. They agreed to ally against Naruto after the summit, and it was clear that the blonde had to be stopped at all costs. Minato had tracked Naruto down to Turtle Island, but it was too late. He didn't know how, but the blonde had blocked his Hiraishin Seal's teleportation ability, and all he could do was track him. He knew Naruto had gone too far, and as much as it hurt him to admit it, he knew Naruto was too dangerous to be left alive. "He's in Uzushio," Minato explained. "I'm not sure what he'll do next, but he has every Biju, and we need to go all out to stop him." "What do you have in mind?" Baki inquired. "The cage will lead a strike force to put an end to whatever he is planning." "How about the brat?" With a scowl on his face, Onoki inquired. Minato sighed deeply and said, "He must perish." Nobody saw Kushina's eyes widen when she heard Minato say that, or the betrayal that washed over her. Uzushio-gakure. When they emerged from Kamui, they were not in the hideout but in the ruins that had once been Uzushio. They looked around confusedly, and Sasuke inquired, "What exactly are we doing here?" "The hideout can't withstand a siege, and after that, the cage will come after us full force, not to mention Madara will not pass up the opportunity, and this is where we will complete the final part of the plan." "However, why Uzushio?" Karen inquired. "It seems fitting," he chuckled, seeing her outrage and telling the truth. "In order for the process to be completed, Kurama must be extracted from me and placed in the Gedo Mazo. Here, I prepared the ritual to ensure Kurama's conscience takes over the Jubis." "But isn't having your Biju extracted fatal?" Sasuke inquired. "Not if you're an Uzumaki. I'll still die if they're not sealed back up, but I can live for a little while longer. That's a dangerous gamble, Naruto-kun, Orochimaru said. Perhaps, but it's my decision, Naruto said. But how will they track us down? Karen inquired. Naruto sighed and displayed the Hiraishin seal on his forearm to them. I wanted to do this in a remote location, but he will be able to track me no matter where I go. I disabled his ability to teleport to me, but he can still find me, and this is the best position I can think of. They understood, and Naruto moved to the ritual circle he had clones preparing for the last 2 days. He and Kurama had been working on it since they first met, and the moment of truth was approaching. He moved through hand seals and summoned the Gedo Mazo in the circle's center, then turned to the group and said, I'll leave a few clones outside, but I'll be vulnerable while Kurama is extracted from me, and I'm counting on you to protect me because I need most of my chakra for the process. Don't worry, we won't let you down, Karen smiled. Finish this, chuckled Sasuke. I'm excited to see what happens next, Orochimaru said with a chuckle. He smiled and moved to extract the 2 remaining Biju. Victory was so close he could taste it. Everything had led up to this moment, and he would not let it pass him by. His apotheosis was near. Naruto had just finished extracting the 2 final tailed beasts, and all that remained was Kurama. The group gathered around him, and he took a deep breath before speaking. I'll proceed to the final step now. The cage and Madara should arrive soon, so be prepared. When he saw everyone nod, he turned to Orochimaru and said, In the form of a person or in the form of a person or in the world. An offer? Orochimaru inquired, his brow furrowed. Tell her that if she comes with us, I'll resurrect her brother and lover, a perfect resurrection, not Edo Tensei. Do you think she'll agree? No, but I respect her enough to give her one more shot, Naruto explained. And if she says no? Orochimaru asked, though given Naruto's willingness to go so far, he already knew the answer. Have no mercy. Orochimaru said with a chuckle. That'll do, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded and moved his gaze to Sasuke. The rest of the cage are up to you. You should be fine, but be cautious, take no chances, and leave no survivors. Sasuke said, rolling his eyes. Sure, I've got this. Naruto gave him a serious look and said, Remember, failure is not an option. I don't care if you get carried away and decide to play with them or simply kill them as quickly as you can, but make sure none of them get past you. Sasuke stood up and said, I will not fail. Good, Naruto said with a nod, turning to Karen and saying, You're my last line of defense. Namikaze and Kushina will most likely come straight here, and I'm counting on you to hold the barrier. Don't try to fight them. You might be able to hold your own against Kushina, but Namikaze is too much for you, and he won't hesitate to kill you. How about your clones? She inquired. They're here for when Madara shows up. They'll help if they can, but don't expect them to stay the entire time. You can rely on me, she said, her determination visible in her eyes. Naruto noticed this and smiled before addressing the entire group. This is a defensive battle. Kill as many as you can while gaining time. Once the ritual is finished and I'm the Jubi Jinchuriki, we win. They all nodded solemnly as Naruto moved to sit in the ritual circle. Karen erected the barrier around him, and the clones entered Sage mode, both to increase their sensory capabilities and to fight at full power because they wouldn't be able to use Kurama's chakra during the ritual. You ready? Naruto thought. I'm as prepared as I'll ever be, Kurama said. Naruto said with a smile. Let's get started. With the cage group. The five Kage and Jiraiya all ran on top of the water toward the visible barrier in the center of Uzushio. They all had one goal in mind: to kill Naruto Uzumaki. They all knew he was dangerous, and they came prepared to fight for their lives. A wanted to rush ahead and save his younger brother, but he knew he couldn't take on Naruto alone, and going ahead would only get him and be killed, but he was still concerned. Given Naruto's strength and the fact that he possessed all of the Biju, it was decided that a small elite strike team would be preferable to large armies. They all knew that the blonde would not go down without a fight. They were quickly interrupted when two figures appeared in front of them. Jiraiya hissed, "Orochimaru," while Tsunade scowled. "Hello, Jiraiya," Orochimaru said mockingly. "So you're Naruto's underling now?" Tsunade remarked. "Oh, I did too. He claims we're allies, but he runs the show on his own, so I guess I ended up taking orders from him," Orochimaru chuckled. "The thing is, I've discovered that following him can be extremely beneficial." "What exactly do you mean?" Jiraiya inquired. The two Sannin gasped as Orochimaru smirked and manifested a wood spear from his hand. "Wood release? But how?" Tsunade exclaimed in surprise. "Oh, this is nothing," Orochimaru said, motioning to himself. "This body doesn't reject me. I can fight at full strength without fear of it failing me. I even got my hands on the Rinnegan." "Bullshit!" exclaimed Jiraiya. "But it's true, I still don't know how, but Naruto-kun knows all kinds of amazing things, and if I have to follow him to get my hands on it, well, that's not so bad, is it?" "You're going down, Orochimaru, and Naruto is right behind you," Orochimaru said with a smile. "You can try, but I have a message from Naruto-kun before we begin." "Is there a message?" Tsunade inquired. "He says he respects you enough to make you this offer: join us, and he will bring both Dan and Nawaki back from the dead." Tsunade hesitated for a moment before scowling and screamed in rage. You said the same thing years ago. Do you want to try it again?" "But that was different. Naruto-kun solved my problem, so I had no reason to keep our agreement. This time, Naruto-kun is offering a perfect resurrection. They will be as alive as you or I." Tsunade didn't respond for a moment, but she spoke just as Jiraiya was about to step in. "No, they wouldn't want that. They'd want me to stop you and protect Konoha, which I'm going to do," Orochimaru said with a shake of his head. "What a disappointment. Very well," he said to Sasuke, who was standing silently beside him. "Sasuke-kun, you know what to do. I'll deal with my old teammates." Orochimaru turned to face his former team, and Sasuke nodded. "Well, I've got my orders, and I'm afraid you'll have to die here. Do you believe you can take on both of us at the same time?" Jiraiya inquired. "I'm not like you two. I didn't spend my years getting drunk or spying on women. Instead, I've spent decades researching jutsu and will gladly show you the fruits of my labor." As Orochimaru entered sage mode, his hair caught fire, and he smiled at them and said, "Shall we get started?" Orochimaru drew his Kusanagi sword and dashed towards the duo, swung at Jiraiya, and the Toad Sage jumped away. Both of them were already spitting out their own jutsu by the time he hit the surface of the water. Sage Art. Great Fire Destruction. Sage Art. Dragon's Breath Fire Style. The two torrents of flame collided and exploded. The water they were fighting in created a lot of steam, and from it came Tsunade with a punch. Orochimaru dodged and moved to cut her arm off with his sword, but she ducked under the swing and punched him. He flew away, and Tsunade followed. As soon as he hit the surface, he sent a large amount of lightning chakra through the water, which slowed her down just enough for her to miss the water whip that dug into her leg and pulled him underwater. Orochimaru then turned and sent snakes towards Jiraiya, but the elder toads on his shoulders sent a massive stream of fire that burned the snakes, allowing Orochimaru to move in and swing his blade. Jiraiya didn't have time to dodge and was forced to use his arms to block. The blade bit deep into them but couldn't cut them off due to Sage Mode's increased durability. Orochimaru then released several extremely sharp blades of wind point blank with a breath. Jiraiya backed off, but Orochimaru couldn't continue his attack because Tsunade exploded from beneath him, forcing him to back off. She rushed towards him, and he continued spitting wind bullets at her, and when she was halfway towards him, he extended his Kusanagi and made a vertical slash. Tsunade had to bend backward to dodge, and he then moved into an overhead slash that she barely managed to sidestep, splashing a lot of water in the air, which Orochimaru transformed into needles and sent towards Tsunade. Orochimaru's intention was never just to pierce them. The needles stuck in Jiraiya's hair and Orochimaru used them as focal points to send a lightning jutsu through their defenses. Jiraiya was forced to deactivate the jutsu just in time to see Orochimaru summon a shadow clone and use a combination jutsu. Sage Art. Sunflare Burn Fire Style. Sage Art. Raging Tempest Wind Style. The two jutsu combined to form a storm of flames that engulfed them. They didn't have time to dodge and thus suffered the full brunt of the damage. Jiraiya was covered in burns and breathing heavily when the fire was finally extinguished, while Tsunade was also injured but healing quickly. "You see, you squandered your lives while I grew stronger. We are no longer equals," Orochimaru explained. "As if we're going to lose to you," Jiraiya remarked in between breaths. "Always the stubborn one," Orochimaru chuckled, shaking his head amusedly. "Alright, let's move on." Along with Sasuke. Sasuke dodged another of A's attacks and jumped back to avoid Baki's wind blades. He'd been fighting them since Orochimaru ran off to fight the other Sannin, and so far they hadn't been able to really hurt him, only a few scratches, while they'd had to fight at their maximum just to survive. "I'm not going to ask where the hell my brother is," A yelled. Sasuke had had enough of his constant questioning and said, "Earlier today, we finished extracting the 8 tails from him. He is dead." A paused in shock before his face twisted into an angry scowl. He let out a rage-fueled scream, and dashed towards Sasuke, the Uchiha creating a Chidori in his hand and covering it with Amaterasu flames before running and colliding with the Raikage midway. Their attacks clashed, and for a brief moment, they appeared to be equal, until the black flames began to spread towards A's arm, forcing him to jump back and try to extinguish the flames. "It's pointless. Only I can put out those flames," mocked Sasuke. A growled but saw that the flames were spreading, so he cut his own arm off. Onoki tried to hit Sasuke but the Uchiha saw him coming and used his M's to make him miss the attack and instead target Baki. Onoki snapped out of it a moment later, and Baki managed to dodge. Unfortunately, he dodged right into the path of Sasuke's attack, and Sasuke's lightning-covered blade cut straight through his arms before the Uchiha shot a point-blank fireball and burned Baki beyond recognition, and he was dead before he even hit the water. "Weak," Sasuke said scowling. Mei tried to hit him with her corrosive vapor, but he simply blew it back at her with a wind jutsu, forcing her to go underwater to protect herself. Sasuke then turned to the 2 other Kage and said, "You're going to die here." "We'll see about that, brat," Onoki said before hurling several stones at Sasuke. He simply used the Susanoo to block it before commanding one of the black flames to move towards A, forcing him to abandon his attack. Sasuke's Susanoo then began to grow, sprouting legs and becoming massive. From within it, he looked down at the 3 before raising his crossbow, an Amaterasu arrow manifesting on it, and he wasted no time in firing it. Onoki and A were able to flee, with a pulling Mei out because she wasn't fast enough to dodge on her own and couldn't fly, but the blade arrived a second later, and while they were able to jump away, the shockwave forced them to split up. Sasuke saw Mei and spit a fireball at her. She used her water style to counter it, but it obscured her vision, and she only had a split second to react before his sword fell on her again. She managed to get away without any debilitating injuries. Sasuke looked at her and said, "You should have listened. If you hadn't interfered, we wouldn't have done anything to you or your country. Uzumaki is too dangerous to leave alive. I couldn't risk it, and besides, he took my Biju, which I demand back or the other nations will conquer Kiri." Sasuke said with a shake of his head. "You've made your decision. Accept it." Sasuke grabbed her and brought her face to face with his Susanoo before he said, "Burn." She couldn't get free from the Susanoo's grip and screamed as the black flames consumed her, leaving nothing behind. The Susanoo's legs vanished and Sasuke had to dismiss it, hitting the surface and turning towards a scowling Onoki. Before he could say anything, he noticed approaching him, so he let himself fall beneath the surface and into the water, and as soon as it missed him, he returned with a kick that sent it flying towards Onoki. The Tsuchikage caught the wreckage and flew to the side to avoid a fireball that came after him. Sasuke jumped towards them, but Onoki threw at him and sent a particle-style jutsu after them. Sasuke was tackled by it and took 2 punches before he managed to get free. He saw Onoki's attack coming and evolved his curse mark to stage 2, manifesting wings from his back and using them to dodge. Sasuke scowled and flew towards Onoki with a black Chidori in hand. Onoki fired several rock projectiles at the Uchiha, but Sasuke easily dodged them. He came upon the Tsuchikage and moved to stab him, but Onoki dodged at the last second. Onoki spat out a mouthful of blood and said as Sasuke smirked, If you think this will suffice to." Sasuke retracted the jutsu and let Onoki's corpse fall into the water before turning to A. He didn't get to finish because the Chidori spread inside him, piercing his organs and killing him on the spot. "Your team is dead, you failed. Lie down and die." A screamed and dashed towards Sasuke, his remaining hand poised to attack, but Sasuke shook his head and sidestepped, forming an Amaterasu blade and severing the Raikage's other arm. A fell on his knees, breathing heavily and bleeding profusely, unable to stand. Sasuke did not spare him. Using Orochimaru, Tsunade healed quickly from them, but Jiraiya needed to be healed, and Tsunade's chakra was running low. Orochimaru stood across from his former teammates, barely any wounds on him while they were covered in them. "The offer is still valid, Tsunade. All you have to do is join us," Orochimaru said. "Never," she said, her breath heavy. Orochimaru said with a shake of his head. "Well, if you want to die with this idiot, so be it." Tsunade moved towards Orochimaru, but she was so weakened that he easily dodged her blows before landing one of his own, sending her flying away. When she recovered, she saw him standing over the exhausted Jiraiya. "I guess this is the end of the line, huh?" said Jiraiya. "It's for you," Orochimaru said solemnly for the first time. "We've been through a lot together." "We did. Do you remember when Hanzo kicked our asses years ago?" Jiraiya said, laughing. "I do," Orochimaru said with a small smile, "and it was your fault we had to fight him in the first place." "Hey, I remember you being the first person to come to my aid when things went bad." "Of course, someone had to look after you." Jiraiya let out a painful laugh. "Do you ever consider what might have been?" he inquired. "Much more than I'd like to admit," Orochimaru admitted. "I guess I'm not the only one." Jiraiya raised his head to Orochimaru and smiled bloodily. "I suppose we're still best friends in the end." When he spoke, Orochimaru gave him a sad smile and a single tear fell from his eye. "There's no way I'd have it any other way." Jiraiya moved towards him, the Rasengan in his hand coming to life. Orochimaru blocked the attack with his hand and used his chakra to nullify it, but the blade pierced Jiraiya's heart a moment later. And a few more things. At the same time. Goodbye, Suna. Will you keep this old idiot safe for me? Both heads were separated from their bodies with a single stroke of his blade, and they collapsed, slowly sinking into the water. Orochimaru stood there silently for a moment before turning around and returning to the barrier. Everything was almost ready and he wouldn't miss it. Karen could feel the battles taking place. One by one, the signatures vanished, and she breathed a sigh of relief knowing that none of them were her allies. She was still inside the barrier, keeping it active to ensure Naruto wasn't harmed while he was vulnerable. Speaking of Naruto, she was concerned as his life force slowly dwindled, but Naruto assured her that he would survive, and she trusted him. She was initially skeptical when he told her what this ritual would do to him, but he had done the impossible before, and she decided to believe in him. She never expected things to turn out this way, from Kusa Genin to enemy of all 5 nations simply because she met a boy she liked. It made her chuckle just thinking about it. She didn't regret it. It had its ups and downs, but overall she was happy with her life, and if things went according to plan she just might end up with the most powerful man on the planet. And to think those girls back in Kusa thought they were better than her because she was the rookie of them. When she felt a signature approaching them, she snapped out of her reverie and said to the clones, "Something evil is on its way." "Madara," hissed one of the clones. They exchanged nods, and the one who had spoken said, "You know what to do, we'll engage him." Despite the fact that they were clones, he couldn't help but say, "Take care. When are we not cautious?" With a grin, one of the clones inquired. She gave him a very dry look, and he chuckled before they all turned serious and dashed off. She just hoped Naruto finished before Madara arrived. She was confident in her abilities as a kunoichi, but she had no hope of defeating someone like him. Soon after, she sensed 2 more signals approaching the barrier, one of which she recognized as the Yondaime Hokage and the other of which she had never felt but was similar enough to her own chakra to guess who it was. Minato and Kushina had managed to avoid the other battles by circling them. However, in order to avoid being dragged into them, they had to suppress their chakra and move very slowly for shinobi of their caliber. They soon arrived at the island's center, and despite the circumstances, Kushina was bombarded with memories of her childhood here, before her home was destroyed. "Kushina?" Minato inquired. "I'm fine, just. This place held so many memories for me. I know it's difficult for you, but we need to concentrate." "Yeah." "Minato?" "Yes? Do you think we shouldn't be doing this?" She inquired, hesitantly. "What exactly do you mean?" "I mean, perhaps we shouldn't try to stop him, perhaps we should trust our son." Minato's face darkened, and he said, I don't want to do it either, but we have no choice. As much as it pains me to admit it, Naruto has gone too far. He is an enemy, and we must neutralize him. But he's our child. We wronged him once, and now we're going to wrong him again? And for what purpose? We have no choice, Minato stated emphatically. He attacked Konoha twice now and made enemies of all nations. He is a threat to Konoha and everyone else first and foremost, despite being my son. But she began, but he cut her off with a kiss when they parted. Trust me, there's no other way, and I'm sorry it had to be this way. But she wasn't paying attention. All she could hear was Naruto's voice echoing in her head. With a single fucking kiss, you just let him do whatever he wanted. She walked robotically behind him, her mind a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts. She was jolted out of her trance when they approached the barrier and she saw the Uzumaki girl Naruto was in love with, despite the situation. Take down the barrier, and it's all over, Minato declared. Karen glared at him and said, Fuck you. I'm not going to betray his trust. Minato frowned as her conscience screamed in Kushina's head again, and she tried to ignore it. I'd rather not hurt you. Naruto deserves to die, but you don't. I love him, and I'm not going to sell him out to you, Karen snarled. Minato shook his head and sighed. Please don't make this any more difficult than it needs to be, he said. He told me about what you did, Karen explained. How could you? He was just a baby, innocent, and he was not yours to sacrifice for the sake of your own beliefs. He was a person, and you had no right to deprive him of his freedom to choose. I didn't have a choice, okay? Minato yelled back. I couldn't just leave Konoha to burn. I was the Hokage, and it was my duty to protect Konoha at any cost, even if it meant losing my son. He was right. You're a monster, you didn't deserve him, you disgust me, Karen said. You have no right to judge me. I did what I had to do. I hate myself for doing it, but I would do it again because Konoha had to come first, even my own son. He's not your son, Minato heard, but what surprised him was that it came from Kushina, not Karen. What are you doing, Kushina? He's not your child. Kushina screamed at him, her chains suddenly appearing and Minato's shock allowing her to entrap him and completely suppress his chakra. He looked at her in disbelief as she continued to yell, tears streaming down her cheeks and rage visible in her eyes. He never mattered to you, I never mattered to you, Konoha did. You know how my son was treated there, as an outcast and a pariah, and yet you want to bring him back. Even when he just wanted to leave, you refused to let him be free, to let him be happy. You said so yourself, Konoha had to come first, not my son, not me, not our family, Konoha. The village that despised my son, that you chose over your own newborn child, that destroyed all traces of my clan, and in whose name you committed countless atrocities. Of course you two are important to me. I adore you both, but... Do you? Do you really believe that? I'm sick and tired of putting my family and myself last. I had never wanted to be Jinchuriki, but Konoha needed me, so my opinion was irrelevant. Where was Konoha when my house was burned down and my people were slaughtered? I just wanted to start a family, but Konoha needed a Jinchuriki, so you turned my son into a weapon of war. I'm finished with Konoha, and I'm done with you. You wanted to kill my son, but I'm not going to let you. I'm tired of being selfless and losing everything I own. He's my son, and I love him, and if it means becoming enemies with the entire world to support him, I'll do it because that's what a mother does. Minato Namikaze, I once loved you, but you betrayed my trust and broke my heart, you betrayed me, and I refuse to let you hurt me again. In the end, Kushina was breathing heavily, tears streaming down her face, but she felt more at peace than ever before. A hand was placed on her shoulder, and she turned to find Karen smiling at her. He told me he still had hope for you. I'm glad to see he wasn't mistaken, and I'm sure he is too. Kushina smiled and was about to hug Karen when the steady flow of Kyuubi chakra leaking off Naruto stopped and Naruto fell to the floor, his life force rapidly dwindling. The two were about to move towards Naruto in concern when a different and very powerful chakra came from the statue. The scene Sasuke and Orochimaru saw when they returned, Minato chained up and struggling to break free, Kushina and Karen standing side by side just outside the ritual circle, and Naruto, whose chakra levels had already increased beyond his previous capacity and continued to grow at an incredible rate, was a massive creature forming for a moment before it flowed into Naruto in massive quantities. Incredible, this chakra is so. And the amount of it is almost infinite, Orochimaru exclaimed. A pralina when Sasuke asked Karen, gesturing towards Kushina, the older Uzumaki nodded. This is. I've never felt anything like this before, Karen exclaimed, taken aback by the sheer purity of the chakra. There were no characteristics that she usually used to determine who a certain signature belonged to. All she felt was pure power. At this point, all of the chakra had been absorbed by the floating Naruto, and he touched the ground with his bare feet, all of his clothes having disintegrated in the process and his new ones being made of chakra. He took a deep breath, and the air around them seemed to turn colder and hotter at the same time, and they all felt their chakra flicker for a brief moment before it became much more comfortable and potent, as if it had never accepted them before and now truly belonged to them. Unfortunately, Minato managed to break free from Kushina's chains. He touched the ground, and dashed towards Naruto with a kunai poised to strike. Kushina's eyes widened, and she sent her chains towards Minato. Karen did the same, and Sasuke's gaze shifted to the Mangekyo as he began to dash towards the blonde. The world seemed to slow down as Minato inched ever closer towards Naruto, all the attacks a heartbeat too slow to reach him. Just as his kunai was millimeters from Naruto's head, he opened his eyes. Naruto's eyes, Rinnegan for a single moment before shifting back to the eyes he had before implanting the Sharingan, only silver instead of blue, turned to dust alongside half of Minato's arm. Minato was pressed into the ground by a massive force. The sound of his bones breaking was audible, but Naruto didn't seem to mind. He looked at his hands, pale and flawless, with no trace of the hellish training he had done for years in preparation for this. His clothes appeared to shift before transforming into a beautiful black shirt with white magatama in the collar, black pants that appeared to be made of liquid instead of fabric, and a white open haori with 10 Rinnegan-like patterns, only white with black lines, with 10 tomo spread out across the lines inside these patterns. A black liquid-like substance appeared in his hand, and for a brief moment it was a staff before transforming into a katana. It floated beside him, as if ready to respond to any commands from its master. His hair changed colors frequently before settling on white, and it grew longer, losing its spikiness and becoming silky smooth. 2 white horns appeared from his forehead, and a third eye opened in between them, the Rinne Sharingan inside radiating unfathomable power. All of this lasted only a moment before the horns and the eye disintegrated into white light, leaving flawless pale skin behind. Naruto looked down at Minato, who was struggling and failing miserably to get out of his crater. Pathetic. Minato was yanked from his position and forced to float in front of Naruto, the force pressing him down, now crushing his limbs. Well? Will you not prostrate yourself before your god? The force slammed Minato into the ground with such force that the bones in his legs ripped through muscle and skin, forcing their way out of his body and eliciting an agonizing scream. That's better, insect. Just wait here and I'll deal with you when I see fit. Black chains burst from the ground and pierced Minato's limbs, forcing him to the ground and immobilizing him completely. Naruto ignored him and turned towards the group, all having looks of fear and apprehension. I heard what you said, he said to Kushina, his eyes shining, and the cracks in her body began to fade. She felt life return to her, and in less than a second, she was no longer an Edo Tensei reanimation, she was alive. She exclaimed, the feeling of life returning to her overpowering her for a brief moment and causing her to fall to her knees. She looked at him with tears in her eyes, and he gave her a small smile before saying, I promise you will have a family. He turned his attention to the other members of the group. He smiled and gestured to Orochimaru and Sasuke, and they felt their chakra boil for a moment before the process was complete. He congratulated her. You now own the Rinnegan. Orochimaru activated it immediately and marveled at what he saw. Sasuke was less enthusiastic but still gave it a shot, and Naruto ignored the two and floated to Karen's. For a brief moment, she felt like an ant in the face of an impossibly powerful storm. The aura he exuded seemed unfathomable. Then he smiled at her, and her fears vanished. He gestured towards her, and a force lifted her, this time so gently she barely felt it. He took her in his arms, his smile never leaving his face or his gaze leaving hers. He cupped her cheek gently, and he whispered just as their mouths were about to meet. Thank you for sticking by me, believing in me, and loving me. I adore you. He then closed the gap, and Karen felt as if she had never seen color before, as the world around her suddenly lit up in so many different tones that she was left breathless. "I love you, too," she managed to say after they parted ways. He gently set her down before turning to Madara, who had just finished dispatching the last of his clones. Clearly, Madara had been playing with them, and now that he was ready, there was no reason to wait any longer. Naruto appeared in front of Madara, looking down on him as if he were unworthy of even acknowledgement. "Madara Uchiha." Madara's eyes widened briefly before he smirked, his excitement radiating from him. "It's been a long time since I've had a good battle, so make this enjoyable." "You're mistaken, Madara.
I'm not going to fight you."
Madara raised an eyebrow, but before he could ask a question, a fragment of energy left Naruto. That chakra floated beside him, and with a flash of light, it had transformed into a clone, except its hair was a dark shade of orange and its eyes were slitted in red. "We meet again, Uchiha," Kurama hissed, and the air around them grew colder. "Kyuubi, or rather Jubi, I'm looking forward to seizing this power for myself," Madara said. "It's been a long time, Madara. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for this day, for the opportunity to make you pay." Madara was about to respond when Kurama raised their hand, and one of Madara's arms collapsed on itself with numerous loud cracks, before being ripped off his body. "This isn't a battle, Uchiha. It's an execution," Kurama explained. Madara spit a torrent of flames at them, but the flames extinguished before they even touched them. "You were expecting to fight Obito," Naruto stated. "The power of the human eye." Madara scowled and hurled several wooden spears at them, which turned to ash as soon as they got close. "Your tricks are meaningless. In your arrogance you thought you were a match for us in this state. You were wrong." Kurama appeared in front of Madara before he could react, swung the black katana and severed Madara's other arm, then kicked him away, the sound of his ribs breaking audible. As soon as Madara regained consciousness, he focused and manifested 2 wooden arms from his stumps. He then created a dozen wooden clones, all of whom had perfect Susanos. "Allow me," Naruto said, chuckling. Suddenly, he manifested his own perfect Susanoo, a white monstrosity as tall as the Jubi, with 10 majestic tails extending from its tailbone, 2 wings extending from its back, Rinne Sharingan symbols covering them, and 2 Rinne Sharingan visible in its eyes. The black katana appeared in its hand, scaled up to fit the massive avatar. Naruto said, "Truth Seeker Blade, Full Moon Slash," and moved to attack. The slash unleashed a destructive wave of energy that easily cut through all of the Susanos. It continued, destroying mountains and forests until the entire visible area was reduced to a completely devastated wasteland. Madara took a step back in shock as his own eyes shifted into Rinnegan. He unleashed Limbo, but the clones were disrupted and dispelled as soon as he formed them. "I've become the Jubi," Kurama explained.
The God Tree is a part of me.
"All chakra is mine to use as I see fit. You are a powerless little man attempting to use my power against me. My name is Madara Uchiha." Madara yelled. "I will bring about world peace and—" "No," Kurama replied. "You are nothing, and you will accomplish nothing. We are gods, and you are nothing in comparison to us." Madara's wooden arms came to life and tried to attack him, forcing him to dismiss them and be left armless once more. "Your plan failed, your dreams are gone, you lost," Naruto said, dismissing his avatar from beside Kurama. "But we have good news for you," Kurama said gleefully, and their cruel grin foreshadowed what was to come. "There's no need to be concerned about where your god is," Naruto said. "Because we're right here," said Kurama. "And we've run out of mercy." They said it all together. Madara felt a pain in his chest, but he couldn't see any wounds there, so the pain spread throughout his body, until he was forced to his knees and screamed in agony. "I'll burn in hell." The chakra in Madara's body became increasingly agitated, consuming the very life force in his body and slowly consuming him. No. I must save the world. Tsukuyomi, the Endless. I can't lose right now. No. Madara had been completely consumed, and the only thing left of him was the small glowing blue sphere that was his chakra, which Kurama slowly crushed, relishing the feeling of finally getting their revenge on their most despised foe. Kurama exhaled deeply and said, "Finally, revenge is sweet after all these years." "A prawl," Kurama said with a smile. "Oh, I'm going to love watching this." Among the others, they were all speechless. The power they saw wasn't human. No human can unleash that much devastation in a single attack, and they can't simply force the chakra in someone else's body to do whatever they want. They can't just look at something and breathe life into it, they can't consume the very life force in someone's body. The group couldn't understand what he became, but it was clear that he was no longer human. They saw Naruto finish Madara off and float back to them, while Kurama went back to the seal to revel in their vengeance. Naruto touched down and smiled at them. "We did it, and we won." "I still can't believe it," Karen said, smiling. "It was something else," Sasuke smirked. Kushina approached him, and he didn't stop her when she hugged him. Instead, he patted her on the back and whispered, "It's fine. I'm glad you're here." "That was definitely something you don't see every day," Orochimaru chuckled. Naruto said with a smile, "There is only one thing left for me to do." He walked over to where Minato was chained to the floor, and with a simple movement, he was yanked free of the chains, causing even more pain, and forced to float in front of Naruto. "This is it," Naruto declared. "I won. I have proven you wrong. I am not yours to sacrifice. I am a god now and you are mine to do as I see fit." Minato didn't respond. Instead, he looked around and noticed that everyone was staring, including Kushina, who refused to meet his gaze. "All those years ago, I was defenseless, and you decided to use me for your own purposes. Now the tables have turned, and I've thought long and hard about what to do with you. I could kill you, erase you from existence, make you watch as I tear your precious village apart, but I have a better idea." "You used me for the sake of your village," Naruto grinned. "It's only fair that I repay the favor." Minato's eyes glazed over with the Rinnegan pattern. A cocoon formed around him, and the last thing he heard was Naruto's final words to him. "Enjoy my rendition of the infinite Tsukuyomi, and have fun with your own personal hell." They were standing on a cliff after exiting the portal. It was just past sunset, and there were trees all around them, with the exception of the village walls in the distance. "Does this sound familiar?" Naruto inquired of Karen. She looked around for a moment before looking at him in surprise. "Is this Kusagakure?" "But, how?" "It had been destroyed," he said with a smile. "I promised you something once, and today is the day I keep that promise." He motioned to the tired-looking red-headed woman entering the only house they could see. She had visible bite marks on her shoulders and resembled Karen. Mom," Karen muttered in surprise. "I promised you I'd reunite you two," Naruto said. The woman got to the door, and as she was about to open it, a red-headed little girl jumped into her arms. They hugged, and a smile appeared on the woman's lips as the little girl began babbling to her. Naruto floats the group near the house, and as soon as she touches the ground, Karen rushes towards the woman and tightly embraces her, shocking and perplexing her. "Thank you very much, Naruto," Kushina said, a small smile on her face. "A child's bond with their mother is often irreplaceable," he said. "I thought you could only rewind time for a few seconds. How did we get so far back?" Orochimaru inquired. "Chakra is incredibly varied, as I'm sure you know, and once I became the Jubi Jinchuriki chakra, it does my bidding with only a thought and its mysteries are revealed to me," enhancing an ability I already possessed couldn't be simpler. Naruto looked at Orochimaru to demonstrate, and the last remaining Sannin could feel how his chakra reacted to Naruto's will. He tried to fight it but discovered he couldn't. Fascinating, Orochimaru said quietly. You haven't seen anything yet, Naruto smirked. What exactly do you mean? Let us not spoil the surprise. Soon after, Karen motioned for them to come over. She and her mother had spoken, and while the older woman had been skeptical at first, Karen was able to prove that she was indeed from the future. They talked for a while. Karen was overjoyed to introduce Naruto to her mother, and Naruto was embarrassed by her. It didn't help that the younger Karen had heard about their relationship and immediately blushed crimson. Naruto turned to Karen's mother after a long and emotional moment. He gestured to her, and all the bite marks in her immediately vanished. Not only that, her chakra and life force seemed much more potent. He smiled at her and said, I intend to save Uzushio, take over, and establish my own nation, free of all the pain and suffering that other nations cause. I would be honored if you and your daughter would join me. Before I agree, I'd like to ask you one question, she said solemnly. What are your plans for my daughter? Moom. Both Karens looked at each other, embarrassed, and the group laughed. I don't know, I worked hard for this power, and given how bossy she is, I might as well hand it over, Naruto joked. The older Karen glared at him and he made a gesture of mock fear before he straightened and said, I'm not ready for it yet, and I'm not sure she is either, but marrying her would make me the happiest man on the planet one day. Both Karens blushed once more, and their mother smiled before speaking. Well, that's settled. I'd love to join you. When she saw this, the older Karen smiled. She had never been happier. Ancestors land 1,000 years before the hidden villages. They reappeared in the woods around midnight. The group looked around, and Sasuke inquired. What are we doing now? The ancestors' land. I've never heard of it, Sasuke replied. I'd be surprised if you did, Naruto chuckled before turning to Orochimaru and asking. Do you know who I'm talking about? It looks familiar, but I'm pretty sure it's not a nation from our time, Orochimaru said. You are correct, we are 1,000 years before the formation of the hidden villages. What brings us here? This is where it all started, Naruto smiled. Suddenly a woman came from the tree line. She had pale skin with delicate facial features, extremely long, sweeping white hair, and white clear eyes, and her eyebrows were cut very short and round. She froze when she saw the group, her gaze fixed on Naruto, and she glared. Otsutsuki, she said quietly. Not quite, not yet, anyway, Naruto smiled. Good day, Kagaya. Do you recognize her? Sasuke inquired. Kagaya Otsutsuki, princess of the Otsutsuki clan, a clan of spacefaring beings who travel around draining the nature chakra of the planets they visit in order to increase their power. She came here tonight because her lover betrayed her and ordered her execution. She plans to eat the fruit of the god tree and gain its power, chakra. How did you find out all that? She insisted. I see no reason to respond to a dead woman's questions. Naruto's eyes just shone at her, and she fell over, paralyzed. Naruto ignored her for a moment, then moved towards the god tree and took its fruit. Every drop of chakra on the planet comes from this. Her son Hagoromo, the sage of 6 paths, distributed it across what would one day become the elemental nations, and the world became what we knew. Every bloodline, ability, and creative application, it all came from this little fruit. So this is where chakra came from, Orochimaru exclaimed, stunned. Naruto smiled and ate it. A blinding light came from him, and when it faded, he didn't appear to have changed physically, but his chakra was even stronger than before. He extended his hand, and a fragment of light came from it, taking the form of a crystal, which he gave to Orochimaru. You desired knowledge. Everything there is to know about chakra is there. It is up to you to unravel this knowledge. Orochimaru took the crystal with care and placed it at eye level. So much to learn, I'm looking forward to it, he smiled. Naruto returned to the god tree, touched it, and the tree appeared to be reduced to light before it was all absorbed. He turned to face Kagaya, stood next to her, and placed his hand on her forehead. If the Otsutsuki want to give me more power, I'll gladly take it from them, and you'll be the first. Naruto took a deep breath, getting used to finally being a full-blooded Otsutsuki, as she too vanished into light and was absorbed. He laughed. Woods near Konoha in another timeline. Wouldn't the changes you make prevent certain events from occurring, and aren't you concerned that you might prevent yourself from being born? Sasuke inquired. That's not how it works. With every decision a timeline is created. In one you reported me when I defected Konoha, in another Karen was saved by you in the Chunin exams, in another Kumo attacked Konoha shortly after the Kyuubi attack and started the Fourth Great Ninja War. The events we lived are one timeline and they will always have happened. Even if I returned us there now, it would only be another timeline where those events happened but our older selves were there. Do you mean you can't change the past? I can make changes in one timeline to achieve the outcome I want and then stay in that timeline to live that outcome. I could prevent the Uchiha massacre and live in a timeline where it never happened, but it would still have happened for you. This is so perplexing, Sasuke said. Usually, time travel is, Naruto agreed. What are we doing now? You seem to only take us to the middle of the woods, Karen stated. Naruto approached Kushina and said. This is for you. What exactly do you mean? She inquired. I'm an adult, and I won't refuse to interact with you, but I simply cannot be the son you desire. She was about to speak but he held up a hand and continued. But I can give you the opportunity to pick up where you left off. You were going to be a mother to a baby, and I can give you that. With a roar, the Kyuubi appeared nearby. This as Kushina started. Yes, the day I was born, or rather, the day Naruto Uzumaki was born. This version of myself has no memories of a previous life or adult conscience, he is just a regular baby. But aren't you exactly the same? We are the same person, but we couldn't be more different. I had whispers and glares and the occasional asshole refusing to sell to me as a kid, so will he, but as an adult, in mind, it was annoying at best, while he, as a child, will be ostracized and lonely. The other kids refused to play with me, but as an adult, I didn't care about what toddlers thought of me and was too busy planning my ascension. I think I do, but I'm not going to let that happen. No, Naruto replied. You won't, so what will you do instead? You can stay here. Your counterpart will die soon, and it will be easy for you to take her place. I can even erase your memories, and all you will know is that you just managed to survive having the Kyuubi extracted from you. You will raise your son, and you will never see me again. Isn't there another option? She inquired. There is, you can stay with us. Take my counterpart and raise him in the Uzushio I will construct. I'm not leaving you, Kushina declared emphatically. Very well, Naruto replied. Come on, we've got a ceiling to break. Kushina nodded and the group moved towards the Kyuubi, where they discovered that both Minato and the other Kushina had been impaled by the Kyuubi's claw and that Minato was going through the hand seals for the Reaper death seal. Kushina didn't even have time to be concerned before Minato completed the sequence, which did nothing. Minato appeared distressed and perplexed, but before he could question it, the Kyuubi transformed into light and was absorbed by Naruto. He created a clone, and with an order to hunt down and absorb the other tailed beasts, the clone vanished. Naruto didn't even bother answering Minato's questions before reducing him to dust with a wave of his hand. Naruto approached this timeline's Kushina and healed her with a gesture. She would still die, but the process would be slowed. While the two Kushinas spoke, he approached his baby counterpart and picked him up. For a brief moment, he looked at baby Naruto in silence, a small smile forming on his lips, his eyes shining, and the baby's skin tone shifted and his hair turned red. "What exactly did you do?" Kushina inquired. "Just as I erased every trace of Namikaze's DNA from his genetic code when I first ascended, he is now only your son." "I see. You're not going to let me tell him about Minato, are you?" she inquired, her face gloomy. "He doesn't deserve the recognition, and I won't stop you from finding someone else to hang out with, but Namikaze, for all intents and purposes, no longer exists." Kushina nodded, though she didn't appear pleased with the decision. It appeared that despite her decision, it would still take time before she could fully let go of Minato. After this timeline's Kushina died, entrusting her son to her counterpart, they all prepared to leave. Despite everything, Kushina smiled as she held her son, a red-headed baby. Middle of the Second Shinobi War in Omegakure. They had arrived in the timeline they intended to stay in a few years ago, and Naruto quickly took over the island nation of Uzushiogakure. There were a few complaints from the resident Uzumaki about where he was taking the nation, but he had taken over as clan head as per Uzumaki traditions, and the nation was prospering like never before under his rule. When Naruto arrived, one of the first things he did was recall all Uzumaki back to the nation and seal its borders with a powerful barrier. The world outside knew nothing of what happened inside, and Naruto had been busy reforming Uzu. He happened to take over just as the second Kyuubi Jinchuriki was chosen. The younger Kushina was terrified but accepted her fate. He sent a clear message to Konoha. "You're not getting any more Uzumaki. Either send Mito back and lose the Kyuubi or keep Mito and deal with the Kyuubi when she dies." Of course, Hiruzen was not pleased, threatening to break their alliance if such terms were enforced, cutting off trading and refusing to return the Uzumaki items entrusted to Konoha. Naruto simply sent Sasuke to recover the items. Trading was meaningless when he could use creation of all things, and as for the alliance, Hiruzen came to discuss the demands just as the attack on Uzushio occurred. Naruto didn't know how they planned to get. Hiruzen and his guards returned to Konoha with no progress in their diplomatic talks and an understanding that, despite being smaller, Uzu still had powerful fighters. All relations were severed, and Uzu lost its only ally, despite the fact that they were experiencing unprecedented growth. Sasuke was sent on a mission that he was more than happy to complete. He came to Konoha, proved he was a full-blooded Uchiha, and took over the Uchiha clan. It appeared that the discontent had just begun, as the previous two Hokage had been Senju and the current was a student of one, and the Uchiha, despite being one of the two founding clans, hadn't had a chance to be in power. The level of discontent was minimal and would not reach the level that led to the coup for years, but Sasuke wasn't going to let it get that far. With a very generous offer from Naruto, the Uchiha clan formally left Konoha and joined Uzu. Hiruzen objected, but by law created by the first Hokage, all clans were free to leave if they so desired, to ensure they were there because they were loyal and not because the village forced them. The Uchiha clan was welcomed, and Sasuke was appointed as one of the first two members of the ruling council of Uzushio, the system Naruto instituted to replace the Kage system, so that authority would be more evenly distributed and all members would policy each other to ensure corruption was kept to a minimum, if present at all. Sasuke was relieved to have his clan back and had recently taken a liking to a Uchiha girl. Naruto expected them to marry in a few years and was generally pleased for his friend. Naruto was currently in Omegakure in search of the orphans. He had already met Nagato, who had been raised in Uzushio because it had never been destroyed, and he always chuckled when he saw the young Uzumaki sneaking glances at the younger Kushina and blushing. That was certainly not something he expected. He saw the battle between Hanzo and who was about to become the Sannin in the distance and teleported nearby, where he discovered two children and a dog hiding in a cave near the battlefield with a quick sensory scan. He appeared in front of them just in time to shield them from an incoming fireball, and the orange-haired boy, Yahiko, stood protectively in front of Conan and inquired, "What is your name? How did you come across us?" He then smiled at them and used his powers to calm their emotions. "Don't worry, I'm a friend named Naruto, and I sensed you here. What exactly do you want from us?" "We have no extra food," Yahiko stated. "Don't worry, I'm not after your food. I came here to help you. Why should you assist us? How can we be sure you're telling the truth? I like you too. You don't deserve this, and I have no reason to lie to you. All I want to do is help." Another stray attack hit the cave, causing it to collapse before the children could react. Naruto had already teleported them and their dog to a nearby cliff, where they looked around in fear and Naruto calmed them down. "Come with me. I can provide you with the home you deserve. You don't have to live in fear, barely scraping by on enough food to survive. You can be happy." How do we know you're not telling the truth?" Conan inquired. Naruto smiled at them, and with a wave of his hand, the injuries in their bodies vanished, as did their hunger, and they felt better than ever before, he said as convincingly as he could. "I just want to help, believe me." They paused for a moment before Yahiko nodded. Conan took a moment longer but also accepted, and the two children and their dogs soon followed Naruto to their new home. Several years later, Naruto approached the grieving woman, a little girl standing fearfully behind her. The woman's face was set in a scowl, but it did little to conceal the signs that she had recently cried. "What the hell are you looking for?" Tsunade inquired. "I have an offer," Naruto said. "What is your name?" "My name is Naruto, but you may know me as..." "I heard about you, the leader of Uzushio, and I thought you Uzumaki didn't leave your island." "The others aren't allowed to leave yet because renovations must be done manually, and they can't leave until Uzushio is the way I want it to be, though the barriers should come down soon. I've also heard that you appear out of nowhere with deals and random acts of kindness that benefit you in the long run," Tsunade added. "That is correct, but just because I benefit from them does not mean that others cannot as well." "Is that correct? Is that why you've come? Do you want me to strike a bargain with the devil?" "You make it seem so evil, but yes, I have an offer for you," Naruto said. "Well? What exactly is it?" With a scowl, she inquired. "Dan and Nawaki." Tsunade stiffened before glaring at him and spatting. "Pala pala 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 regal. I am aware of many things, but that is beside the point. What I am offering you is their resurrection. And you expect me to believe you can resurrect them?" Tsunade gasped before taking a cautious step towards them when Naruto made a gesture and the translucent forms of both Nawaki and Dan appeared. "It's easy for me to bring them back. Just say yes, and they'll be returned to you. What do you want in return?" Tsunade inquired, willing to give almost anything to have them back. "There's nothing too difficult. I'd like you to come work for me at Uzushio Hospital. Would you like me to betray Konoha? You don't have to fight. Just heal, and I'll even activate your medic program. How are you? Don't be concerned, it's a simple deal. Do you accept?" Tsunade appeared conflicted for a moment, but in the end, she accepted. Nawaki and Dan were revived, and the group teleported back to Uzushio after an emotional moment. Tsunade was content and excited to begin her new life. Several years later, Naruto stood on his balcony, looking out over his village. Uzushio had become the most prosperous village in all of the elemental nations, its people were content, and its growth seemed to go on forever. He returned his gaze with a small smile, seeing Karen in bed with a ring on her finger and a pregnant belly. He had never expected to be a father, but he couldn't be happier, and he vowed to be a better father than his own. Orochimaru could hardly be dragged out of his lab. He was always busy with what Naruto had named the Philosopher's Stone, the crystal he had given Orochimaru years before, the Snake Man came up with all sorts of inventions and could be credited with a large part of Uzushio's growth. Sasuke had married a few months before Naruto, and his wife was due to give birth any day now. The Uchiha could be seen walking around Uzushio and smiling, which surprised those who knew him before. Though the boy was now a child and was a little troublemaker, the problem was that Kushina was also a troublemaker and the two could be seen laughing throughout the village. Naruto knew his relationship with her didn't start positively, but he was friends with her now and was glad. She had been so happy when she found out she was going to be a grandmother. Team Akatsuki, made up of Yahiko, Nagato, and Konan, was one of the best teams in the village. Wherever they went, they always returned with new friends and allies. Naruto had temporarily resurrected the older Nagato and Konan a few years ago, and they were happy to see their younger selves happy, and even happier to see Yahiko again. The younger Nagato and the younger Kushina were in a relationship, which Naruto enjoyed teasing Nagato about when they were alone, as did his teammates. Tsunade ran the hospital, and Uzushio's medical care was the best thanks to her. Casualties were minimal thanks to her medical program, and those few that did die Naruto revived. As far as he was concerned, nobody was dying on his watch. Tsunade already had a child with Dan and another was on the way. She had handed over the Senju clan seat to Nawaki, and the boy, now a young man, had done everything he could to make her. Minato, true to Naruto's word, had been assisting the village. However, the modified version of the infine Tsukiyomi he had been placed under caused his chakra to be constantly drained to power various things throughout the island. He was trapped in an eternal nightmare drawn from the darkest reaches of his mind, and he would remain there forever. Konoha had been on the decline. Without another Uzumaki, they were forced to modify Mito's seal in order to keep the Kyuubi inside even after she died. With the numerous losses they had in the wars and Uzushio poaching some of their people, they had become the weakest of the 5 great nations, and only the prodigies they produced kept them from becoming a minor one. They would have still lost the Kyuubi when Naruto sent a clone to absorb this timeline's tailed beasts if it hadn't been for the fact that the other nations also lost theirs and no one knew who did it. Konoha would have already been exterminated. During the Third War, Konoha attempted to invade Uzushio, but it failed, and this timeline's Minato Namikaze, who had been leading the assault, was captured and joined his counterpart as a chakra battery, forcing the rest of the forces to retreat. Naruto could have wiped them out, but he didn't want to finish Konoha off. Instead, he wanted to see how far they would dig their own grave to rise to the top. In the end, this timeline's Orochimaru became the 4th Hokage. Naruto considered poaching him, but his Orochimaru said he'd rather not, and one genius Snake Man was enough for him. The people were happy, and Naruto ruled as the head of the Uzumaki clan. Technically, he only had authority over his clan, but the other counselors usually listened to him. Looking back on everything he had gone through, Naruto had to admit that he didn't think he'd get this far. It was a long journey, but he made it in the end. He was content, and that was all that mattered to him.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.